I want you to close your eyes and imagine a crime scene. It's just you and the deceased, and that's whomever and however many there might be. It's likely that you imagined a quietness and a sense of stillness. That's really the curious nature of crime scenes. The anger, the violence, the bloodshed, they're all gone. In the end, all we are left with is an eerie peace and an unnerving silence. Well, that's because a crime scene is really just a snapshot. It's a moment frozen in time. And these scenes don't always tell the tale of what happened before. Usually we, and by we I mean the police and the other investigators, have to find these pieces of the past and put them back together again until we can see the bigger picture. But there are also those crime scenes, as any cold case enthusiast will tell you, that simply defy interpretation. No matter how long they are sorted and studied and rearranged, the puzzle pieces simply don't fit. Now we're left not just with a murder, but with a mystery. Welcome to Haunts and Hollows, True Tales of the Gothic South. I'm your host, mystery author Liam Ashe. In this episode, I'll be taking a look at one man's bizarre, unexplained journey that started in Western Canada and ended over 3,000 miles later with a dead body in a Knoxville, Tennessee parking lot. It's a tale that no crime scene, particularly one as baffling as this one, could ever foretell. This episode of Haunts and Hollows is sponsored by my good friends at Arcanoctus. They invite you to unlock your curiosity with their collection of the odd, the unusual, and the obscure. Stories usually begin at, the beginning. For this tale, however, we will be starting at the end. And that end came on the morning of July 11th, 1996. A crew of workers was arriving at the construction site of Knoxville, Tennessee's soon-to-be newest Country Inn and Suites right off Strawberry Plains. It was going up just across Interstate 40 from the Cracker Barrel. The area was known for prostitution and use by transient members of the community, so it wasn't much of a surprise when the men came across what they thought might be a dozing homeless man, even if he was half naked. The first arrivers called the police to report a possible vagrant sleeping in their parking lot. When a few of the crew members got closer, they realized the scene was something far more sinister. According to one worker interviewed by a local news channel that day, his lips had already turned purple. We tried to see if he was still alive and needed medical attention. The first questions were raised by the state of the man's body. According to then Lieutenant Jimmy or J.J. Jones, who was later a Knox County sheriff, his pants were removed in a way not like someone would take their own pants off, but in a way that someone else would remove your pants from you. His socks were turned inside out. His shoes were off and his shirt was ripped open. A later report then noted that one of his shoes was even resting beneath his head like a pillow. Then there were the obvious wounds on the body. According to Knoxville Chief Cold Case Investigator David Davenport, he was definitely struck in the head, looks like he put up his hands and was struck in the hand, and then he went down and looks like road rash, like he was wrecked in a motorcycle. Then there was the cash, gold, and other valuables strewn all around the scene. The German, Canadian, and U.S. currency alone totaled nearly $4,000. Several thousand in gold and platinum bars and precious metal jewelry dotted the ground. The dead man's fanny pack contained 5 troy ounces of gold bars, gold and platinum coins, more jewelry, keys, and a pair of sunglasses. A black duffel bag held a collection of maps and travel receipts. Last, the man's driver's license, passport, and credit card were located further down the road. According to investigator Davenport, they were strewn about 100 yards from his body, like they had been thrown from the vehicle as it was moving. Fortunately for police, those documents identified the dead man as 31-year-old Robert Dennis Blair Adams, who went by Blair, of Surrey, British Columbia. That was one question answered, and just a few hundred more to go. A coroner at the University of Tennessee Medical Center examined the body and listed a series of critical findings. First, Blair had sustained a number of cuts and abrasions. Police theorized that some of the older marks were likely just part of what they later learned was Blair's work in construction. The fresh wounds, they suggested, were purely defensive and from around the time of his death. There was a serious laceration on his forehead, likely from a pole or crowbar. One critical blow to his abdomen had ruptured his stomach, leading to sepsis as the probable cause of death. There were also signs that Blair may have been sexually assaulted. Police had the who and the what. Now they needed to figure out how, and far more challenging, why. Let's pause here and turn back the clock 32 years. We've seen the end of the story. Perhaps if we start over at the beginning, we can connect the two. Robert Dennis Blair Adams was born December 28, 1964, in Surrey, British Columbia. He worked as a foreman with his father's construction company, and despite a few early run-ins with the law, he appeared to be living a normal life. The year before he died, Blair had spent some time on a construction project in Frankfurt, Germany. While there, he had become romantically involved with a German woman. She later described him as a gentleman. When he returned to the States in late 1995, there seemed to be a change in his demeanor. While before he was a diligent worker and an effective foreman, by early 1996 he showed little interest in his work and often left job sites unlocked. Then he began to make a series of critical life changes. Although 2 years sober, Blair decided to quit attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. He abruptly quit his job and even failed to pick up his last paycheck. His moods became very dark and very erratic. He began confiding in people close to him that things weren't quite right. Blair's mother, Sandra Edwards, recalled him saying, "Something was definitely very much the matter. He hadn't been sleeping well. Something was wrong. I asked him numerous times what was wrong, and he said, 'I don't think I should tell you about it.' To this day, she has no idea what it was." To his German girlfriend, he claimed that he was worried about his former co-workers in Germany. He feared that they may try to hurt him. He never offered up anything specific. To his friends at home, he expressed fears that someone was spreading unfounded rumors about him. That same somebody, he claimed, was trying to kill him. Blair's fears reached critical mass on July 5, 1996. At his local bank, he withdrew most of his life savings and emptied his safety deposit box of more than $6,000 in gold, platinum, and currency. He attempted to enter the United States on a ferry from Victoria, British Columbia, to Seattle, Washington. For U.S. immigration officials, he raised a number of red flags. As a single man carrying an unusual amount of cash, and that's not to mention all that gold and platinum, he was tagged as a likely drug runner. When they ran his name through their systems, his convictions for assault and drug charges popped up, and he was denied entry into the country. He tried again on July 9th, but was picked up by Border Patrol officers while attempting to cross the border on foot near Blaine, Washington. This time he was detained for matching the description of a man implicated in an automobile theft. That car had been discovered not far from the border crossing. As the Border Patrol had no other evidence against Blair, they let him return to Canada. Undeterred, he tried later again that same afternoon. He drove to Vancouver International Airport, where he rented a Nissan Altima, leaving behind his blue Chevette. He successfully made it to Seattle, where he bought a one-way ticket to Washington, D.C. This ticket, investigators have pointed out, was unusual. According to then Lieutenant Jones, he paid about $770 for a one-way ticket when he could have purchased a round-trip ticket for approximately $300 to $400. It just seemed very unusual. Blair landed at D.C.'s Dulles Airport on July 10th, where he rented a Toyota Camry and headed southwest. One motorist had a random brush with the soon-to-be victim when Blair backed his rental into the man's car. When that motorist later spoke to police, he described Blair as nice, but in a hurry. Detectives were curious why Blair had chosen Knoxville as his destination. Knoxville detective Perry Moyers commented, "Why go to D.C. to turn around and come back to Knoxville? He had no reason to be in East Tennessee. He had no reason to be in Knoxville. He knew no one in East Tennessee or the eastern United States." According to the dead man's mother, it wasn't unusual for him to just go somewhere and be with somebody. Perhaps, she suggested, he was on his way to the Summer Olympics in Atlanta. police found no evidence to support her theory. On the evening of the 10th, Blair arrived in East Knox County, Tennessee. Just after 5 p.m., an interstate repair service driver named Gerald Sapp got a call from the BP station on the Strawberry Plains Pike. A driver at the station was having trouble getting into his car and needed help. When Gerald arrived, he quickly determined that the driver was trying to unlock a Toyota Camry with a Nissan key. That man, Blair Adams, refused to check his pockets for another key and demanded to have the car unlocked. Instead, Gerald called for a tow truck and dropped Blair off at the nearby Fairfield Inn. Gerald later recalled of Blair, he didn't appear to be messed up, he didn't appear to be on drugs, but his mind wasn't functioning correctly for some reason. At the Fairfield Inn, his behavior continued to be erratic. According to clerk Tika Hartsfield, in her own words, he was just very nervous, agitated, expecting someone to come in on him, even though there wasn't anybody there. The hotel's security cameras show Blair loitering in and out of the lobby for nearly 40 minutes before purchasing a room using cash. At 7:37, he took his room key, but before the clerk could give him his change, Blair left the lobby and walked outside. Later reports would show that he never even entered the room he had rented. That was the last time he was known to be alive. And that brings us back to where we started, that morning of July 11th, 1996, and the discovery of Blair Adams' body just down the road from the hotel lobby where he was last seen. Despite thorough searches of the crime scene, the body, and the dead man's rental car, very little evidence has come to light. Police did find a long blonde hair clutched in one of his hands, but the DNA has never been matched to a known donor. Only 3 credible witnesses have come forward. A security guard at a nearby property reported hearing a loud scream around 3:30 a.m. The guard claims, though, that it sounded like a woman's scream. 2 women claimed to have seen Blair talking to an unknown man outside the Cracker Barrel. A composite sketch was created, but it led to no additional leads. According to a Knoxville Police Department statement from 2020, investigators claim they have never received a single credible tip while working on Blair's case. Since then, most of the guesswork has been taken up by the amateur sleuths of the internet. The common consensus rules out a motive of robbery. With Blair dying or already dead, the thieves wouldn't have left several thousand in cash and precious metals simply lying on the ground. Early police reports suggested that his death might have been sex-related, since he was almost entirely unclothed when discovered. Others discount this theory, as crime scene details point out that his pants looked to have been removed by someone else, possibly after his death, and that his socks had been put back on inside out. In a later interview, Blair's mother admitted in the past her son may have had a relationship with a man, but that shed no new light on the investigation. Given his past troubles with drinking, there may have been an alcohol or narcotics angle to the crime. Toxicology reports, however, show the presence of neither in his body at the time of death. His experience as a construction worker might offer some clue to why he died on a building site, but it still doesn't explain how or why. Last, several true crime enthusiasts have underscored the possible resemblance Blair shares with the sketch of a man wanted in another murder. In 1988, Philip Frazier was a 23-year-old student on his way to Olympia, Washington. He was last seen picking up a hitchhiker at a cafe, and he was later found shot to death in a remote area off the Glacier Highway in British Columbia. There are suggestions that the killer may have used Philip's identity for a short time after committing his murder. In one curious but likely unrelated note, former Lieutenant and later Knoxville Sheriff Jimmy J.J. Jones, who I quoted earlier, is currently facing a litany of charges along with several other members of the sheriff's office. They were charged with conspiracy to commit theft, theft of property over $250,000, and theft of services over $60,000. This is the result of a multi-year investigation. It alleges that the charged men used narcotics staff credit cards and seized cash to make unauthorized purchases for personal benefit. Regardless of the outcome of that investigation, the search for Blair Adams' killer or killers seems to have reached a dead end. Unless a new tip surfaces or a new witness steps forward, the story of his death ends where we began, in a lonely, dark parking lot just off Interstate 40. If you have any information that could move this case forward, no matter how insignificant you might think it to be, I encourage you to call the Knox County Sheriff's anonymous tip line at 865-215-TIPS. Again, that's 865-215-TIPS. Next up on Haunts and Hollows True Tales of the Gothic South, we'll be exploring the greener side of true crime and Southern Gothic folklore. We're taking a look at the real stories and the folk tales of historic trees with roots soaked in blood. These silent witnesses to mankind's worst impulses have endured murders, lynchings, and even worse beneath their shaded canopies. If you're looking for more folk legends and true tales from the Gothic South, I invite you to subscribe to this podcast. You'll get a new episode every other week. In each, we will uncover the places, the people, the customs, and the stories that lurk in the shadowed history of the South. To get your copy of each episode's research folio, just sign up for my newsletter. You can find that button, as well as a list of my latest releases and a schedule of cons and events that I attend all around the South, at my website at hauntsandhollows.com. Until then, safe travels.